Honourable members, ministerial statements. Minister for Public Enterprise.
I don't need leave. Thank you, Mr. Assistant Speaker. Mr. Assistant Speaker, I'd like to commence this ministerial statement by acknowledging and belatedly congratulating our Prime Minister, the Honourable James Marape, Mr. Assistant Speaker, yourself, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable John Rosso, fellow ministers, the Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Joseph Lelang, and each of you, my fellow members of this 11th Parliament, for being elected by our people to represent them again in Parliament. Mr. Assistant Speaker, I'd also like to record my appreciation to Prime Minister Marape for his unwavering confidence and continued support in my efforts to improve the performance and profitability of our state-owned enterprises as Minister responsible for this portfolio, including Kumul Agriculture, Kumul Petroleum Holdings, and Kumul Mineral Holdings. Mr. Assistant Speaker, we've, since 2019, when this Marape government decided to embark on a very comprehensive SOE reform program, witnessed numerous improvements across a range of measures, starting from financial audits to company performance. This includes, for example, Mr. Assistant Speaker, the turnaround of our airline company, Air Guinea, from crippling losses to achieving sustainability whilst navigating the turbulent and unprecedented restrictions caused by a global pandemic, namely COVID-19, and the record-breaking profit margins delivered by PNG Ports Corporation Limited. Mr. Assistant Speaker, with our donor partners from the Asian Development Bank, friendly countries such as Australia, Japan, New Zealand, the United States, and more recently France, and our other bilateral and multilateral affiliations, our SOE reform program, progressed by our own company, Kumul Consolidated Holdings Limited, centers around high-level objectives that encourage financial stability, delivery excellence, robust governance, performance disclosure, transparency, growth, and inclusivity. A key reform, Mr. Speaker. A reform program, as we all know, is a challenging undertaking for any government in any country. Success is based upon numerous factors, and results often delivered not immediately but after many years of restructuring and recapitalization. Some of the key reforms achieved since 2019, when the Marape government took office, and endorsed by the government itself, include, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, amendments to the enabling legislation within the KCH Act, providing greater oversight, improved accountability, disclosure, and responsibility. Secondly, establishment of a project capital investment committee to provide additional due diligence to ensure both commercial viability and project effectiveness. Thirdly, qualifying and quantifying the value of community service obligations undertaken by the various SOEs to better understand tariff requirements and accurate cost of capital pricing. Fourthly, creation of a board of directors through an independent search and merit-based selection process, including gender inclusivity, with more than 20% or 25% of our SOE boards now comprised of female directors. Fifth, completion of financial audits up to 2021 to ensure accountability and transparency, with effort now being expended to ensure disclaimer notices are cleared so that accurate financial positions of our SOEs can be ascertained. Mr. Speaker, this relates to all our SOEs being up to date and clearance being given by the Auditor General's office. Things which have never been done before, but we've been able to do it, and we are up to date to 2021, Mr. Speaker. Sixth, merging of Telecom and B-Mobile to develop substantial savings and ensuring that only one B-Mobile company, not two, being able to compete against Digital and others. Seventh, separating PNG Datacore from Tumul Telecom Holdings and establishing an independent wholesale communications company. Next, merging of Edarwanu and Water PNG to develop substantial savings and strengthen the balance sheets for future capital development when it comes to providing affordable water and sewage services to our urban centers and rural areas. Ninth, restructuring and improving any Guinean telecom, resulting in improved operating and financial performance of any Guinea and positioning telecom for partial privatization. 10th, commencement of the ownership restructuring program of Port Moresby Water, part of Water PNG, and Edarwanu merger. 11th, settling of significant arrears for service delivered between our government and the SOEs. Next, 12th, establishment of the SOE board and management key performance indicator review to ensure that all of those who are involved are accountable for the decisions made by them. 13, substantial capital investment programs undertaken by KCH in the energy, communications, and technology sectors. 14, progressing partial privatization for telecom, People's Macro Bank, and any Guinea for capital fundraising and improved performance. 15, provisioning of working capital support by KCH to our SOEs during stress conditions resulting from restrictions imposed by COVID-19. 16, commencement of the development of the KCH Property Land Bank program to repurpose and monetize all the extensive land owned by our SOEs right throughout the country and building assets across the country and diversifying capital raising. 17th, securing significant bilateral investment through grant and concessional borrowing, including the 1.5 billion Kina Port Development Upgrade Project from Australia and the 1 billion Kina Power Sector Development Project to connect houses to sustainable energy. And 18th, Mr. Assistant Speaker, continuing the Marabe government's SME financial package to our small businessmen and women through the National Development Bank. Mr. Assistant Speaker, the completion of the various sub-programs of our SOE reform was instrumental in demonstrating compliance with the ADB policy-based lending facility, resulting in the drawdown of $100 million in 2020, $150 million in 2021, and a further $250 million for 2022. Mr. Speaker, concessional lending from Australia was extended as a result of gains made in the name of the 2019 SO reforms started by the Marabe government. Reform results, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Assistant Speaker, we recognize that we still have a lot of substantial work yet to be completed. However, since 2019, the SO reform program has generated tangible results, and these have demonstrated in the form of improved service delivery, revenues, profits, and dividends as follows. Number one, Mr. Assistant Speaker, total SOE dividend has increased from 50 million Kina back in 2018 before the reform program was introduced to 130 million Kina in 2022. Consolidated revenue from the SOEs has increased from 3 billion Kina in 2018 to 3.5 billion in 2022. Consolidated profit and loss after tax has increased by over, Mr. Assistant Speaker, over 200% from a loss in 2018 to a forecasted profit in 2022. This, Mr. Assistant Speaker, is an amazing achievement despite the impact of COVID-19 restrictions, the volatility of fuel pricing from the war in Ukraine, and the global inflationary pressures in general. Mr. Speaker, any Guinea in particular recorded 43% customer growth compared to last year, and this translates to sales exceeding 1.1 billion Kina for 2022, and will be profitable for the first time in 5 years. Mr. Speaker, our NDB loan customers have increased by more than 120% as a result of the 80 million Kina that were injected by the Marabe Rosso government. Mr. Assistant Speaker, telecom customers have increased by 27% compared to last year. Cargo across major ports in lay and motor care have increased to an average of 6% despite the global downturn and logistic challenges from China. 8, Mr. Speaker, the commencement of the grid electrification upgrade program for Port Moresby and Ley Ramu, a series of infrastructure development and rehabilitation projects. Number 9, the commencement of a comprehensive fuel switch program seeking opportunities to transition from expensive diesel generation through gas and to more sustainable alternatives like hydroelectricity and solar, which is in line with the global push for cleaner and greener energy. 10th, Mr. Speaker, commencement of a debt restructuring program through the establishment of the KCH Debt Management Committee to explore and deliver cash flow savings against existing KCH and SOE debts. This includes the payout of the 250 million PNG Ports Motorcare Expansion Loan. And 11th, Mr. Assistant Speaker, the appointment of SOE boards of directors and senior management independently and on merit for the first time in so many years through a stringent selection process, noting that 14% of the current directors are women with a goal to reach 50% by 2030. Mr. Assistant Speaker, as at September 2022, the net value of the assets of our SOEs and KCH was 6.1 billion kina, representing year-on-year growth of 28%. For the year 2022, our SOEs have projected revenues of 3.5 billion. That's up 17% from last year, with PNG Ports Corporation, NE Guinea, and MVL being the best performing SOEs. Mr. Assistant Speaker, these are not small organizations. They are about 7,100 employees across our 9 SOEs, possessing a variety of qualifications and experience. The SOEs are required to deliver competent, effective, and accessible services with an appropriate return on investment for our people who continue to remain the shareholders. Mr. Assistant Speaker, as previously indicated, dividend returns to the state have grown year on year to a projected 130 million kina for this year, which will be declared once the books are closed early next year. Mr. Assistant Speaker, at this juncture, I'd like to indicate that KCH has commenced contributing towards our much talked about Sovereign Wealth Fund under the leadership of Prime Minister Marabe. It's designed to support our country's efforts to achieve economic stability and sustainability. Its dividend of 80 million kina for the year 2019 has been applied in accordance with the NEC decision number 29 of 2019, and a sum of 5.6 million has already been paid to a trust account to be then used as the first deposit in the Sovereign Wealth Fund. This, Mr. Assistant Speaker, is the first contribution ever towards this program and is testament of the Marabe government's desire to not only diversify economic drivers, but also encourage a culture of savings to access sustainable fiscal mechanisms. We will be directing dividends, or we'll be expecting dividends from Kumul Petroleum Holdings and Kumul Mill Holdings to the Sovereign Wealth Fund following the lead of KCH. Mr. Assistant Speaker, this government is using the proceeds of today's investments to provide surety for our people's future needs. The SOE challenges, Mr. Speaker, the challenges that we face are both local, requiring public policy solutions, and global, requiring appropriate international public finance solutions and a fairer global ordering, one that encourages countries in strategic positions such as ours, Papua New Guinea, to prosper through market access and enable innovative solutions to tackle unique development challenges. The world itself, as we know, is grappling with inflation, war, and changing weather patterns, which are impacting our country to increase cost of goods and services, and of course, extreme weather. Mr. Assistant Speaker, as a consequence of these challenges, we experience poor operating circumstances, an increase in the frequency of blackouts, high non-revenue earning water position, significant increase in operating costs, flight cancellations, and poor telecommunications connectivity. Mr. Assistant Speaker, these challenges are not unsurmountable, but they must be met with innovative approaches if we are to succeed comprehensively. Mr. Speaker, first, our SOEs require targeted, sustained capital investment funding to assist in the replacement of aging infrastructure and assets. Any Guinea, for instance, must undergo a substantial fleet replacement program to future-proof the company to meet our changing requirements. Decision will be made very soon to replace our older aircraft, Mr. Speaker. Second, community service obligations are necessary and must be quantified, contracted, and supported through government subsidies. PNG Power must absorb about 500 million in obligations each year to ensure power is provided across the smaller, unprofitable centers. PNG Power has continued to absorb the increased cost to its business, such as fuel, recognizing that PNG Power has not benefited from a tariff increase for nearly 10 years. Tariff reform is necessary, Mr. Speaker, to support the evolving businesses, the changes to the various sectors, and to accurately reflect the true cost of capital. We can no longer rely on fossil fuel-based power generation, but it is presently cheaper than building more sustainable alternatives. Tariffs must be established to favor and incentivize sustainable energy production. Fourth, Mr. Speaker, we must instill a culture of project ownership and execution and recognize that competitive advantage is a vital part of our business strategy if our SOEs are to become profitable and sustainable. Five, projects that are being completed are often substantially over-budgeted or delayed by a number of issues. The SOE debt continues to present challenges to KCH and the general business trust. Cash flow pressures are increased due to the excessive cost of borrowing and stressed balance sheet, making it difficult to expand our businesses. Mr. Speaker, topographic, demographic, and economic challenges mean that innovative solutions must be sought by us to provide services. One size will not fit all in PNG, as we know. Our SOEs must invest in projects that deliver regardless of the obstacles. Mr. Speaker, insufficient monetization of assets developed due to inadequate skills capacity and resource limitation with the SOEs are a problem. But once infrastructure is developed, it must result in revenue growth so that debt associated with that infrastructure can be serviced, but at a profit. Mr. Speaker, there are significant opportunities to partner with multilateral and bilateral agencies to develop useful infrastructure and supportive policy. We must ensure that projects are well structured with clear outcomes to ensure delivery is achieved to expectation. We must encourage effective donor coordination and cohesion towards high-impact investments in our SOEs, particularly addressing water, sanitation, and power challenges in our cities and towns. Mr. Speaker, we must create competent service continuity through better resourcing, better risk awareness and management, and strengthen operations through implementation of appropriate plans and capital investment. And that is how we can start programs to avoid numerous blackouts, Mr. Speaker. We must ensure adequate working capital for our SOEs to become self-sufficient. This will ensure that our SOEs can meet their credit obligations in full and, of course, in a very timely manner. Mr. Speaker, we need a comprehensive capital works program to see sizable rehabilitation and replacement of assets across our SOEs. We recognize the engagement by donor partners with concession lending and grant facilities. Mr. Assistant Speaker, our SOEs are in the condition they are in today due to a history of poor accountability, poor investment decision-making by previous boards and management, challenging operating environments resulting from global pandemics and wars such as in the Middle East and Ukraine. Where we have executed initiatives competently and responsibly, Mr. Speaker, we see improved performance figures and service delivery as demonstrated earlier. When you do things carefully and properly, we see results. Mr. Assistant Speaker, if we want our SOEs to perform effectively and profitably, they must demonstrate that they can be self-reliant. Where appropriate, we must continue to invest in them, but we will do so wisely and with greater oversight. We must sometimes necessarily politically interfere in some of our SOEs. Mr. Assistant Speaker, we recognize the sovereign obligations they have to nation building, and we will support SOEs to remain sustainable and ensure they appropriately monetize the assets that are being built. Mr. Assistant Speaker, for the way forward, as we look forward, our strategy is to build on the work already completed with continued focus on the turnaround sustainability, drive productivity, improve revenues, reduce costs, and implement debt reduction strategies to rebuild the value of the general business trust. Ultimately, Mr. Assistant Speaker, this will lead to improved services for our people and a sustained return on investment for our government. Mr. Assistant Speaker, the Marabe government, we have laid the foundation for success in the SOEs through improved governance and capacity building starting in 2019 so that we can execute an aggressive growth strategy through the turning around of the performance of our SOEs, commercializing the underutilized assets in their balance sheets, and investing, of course, in the core infrastructure. Mr. Assistant Speaker, as we consider the significant numbers of projects that our government has successfully negotiated and announced, including the Papua LNG project, for example, it is critical that we capitalize on the national content opportunities before us. We must ensure a legacy remains for the benefits for our people beyond the life of the project construction period. These projects should be a major catalyst for sustained economic development and employment growth. KCH, Mr. Assistant Speaker, in partnership with the Department of National Planning and the Department of Treasury, have been identifying projects of national significance that will optimize national content, encourage the onshoring of manufacturing opportunities from abroad, and contribute to the development of a dedicated, skilled workforce. Mr. Assistant Speaker, we understand the importance of having a balanced investment portfolio to reduce the risk exposure on the general business trust. As a result, KCH has embarked on a journey to diversify its investments to reduce its risk exposure in line with this stabilize, invest, and grow strategy. This includes diversifying the investment portfolio into more liquid capital markets with the aim to participate in bond and stock markets where relevant financial instruments, equities, and debt securities are used to grow and invest in the general business trust. Mr. Assistant Speaker, we continue to develop strategies and associated plans to progress the SOEs to achieve their core objectives of number one, the delivery of competent, accessible, reliable, and affordable services. Number two, the provision of an appropriate return on investment by our government. Mr. Assistant Speaker, KCH and the SOEs have developed and agreed on a series of strategic objectives that focus on customer growth, delivery excellence, regulatory compliance, and workforce culture, among other key components. These objectives form the basis of the way forward for our SOEs. Number one, employment of formal customer growth strategies and targeted investment programs. Number two, realigning the KCH SOE procurement system to comply with the amended KCH Act to ensure greater transparency, accountability, and value for money in all procurement arrangements. Number three, negotiate a sectoral development program funded by the ADB and other donors to support projects that encourage incremental revenue growth and improved service levels. Number 4, establish and adopt the KCH SOE PIP coordination and monitoring performance based on commercial and developmental investments. Number 5, establishment of the KCH Infrastructure Development Committee to maintain oversight of projects of substantial national importance over and above 250 million in value, tasked with ensuring project execution. Number 6, encourage investment diversification, including the establishment and development of a property portfolio and the Invest in PNG program, an industrial park to facilitate in-country manufacturing to meet resource projects, engineering, procurement, construction requirements while satisfying our project national content obligations. Number 7, continued improvement in financial audits to ensure unqualified audit opinions and continue our commitment to disclosure of SOE financial performances. Number 8, completion of the partial privatization of telecom retail and mobile access network. Number 9, commencement of the privatization of any Guinea. Number 10, accelerate KCH and National Planning and Monitoring Infrastructure Management Facility to provide oversight for the rolling out of projects associated with the public investment program. Number 11, continue to monetize assets, including the Fairfax Port Development Project, the commercialization of the existing facilities to a major modern commercial, residential, tourism and public recreation precinct. Number 12, complete the commercialization of the People's Microbank Limited that will result in a new commercial bank to compete with the existing commercial banks so our people can have access to competitive banking services. This is the much talked about National Banking Corporation, which will take off under the leadership of Prime Minister next year. Number 13, Mr. Assistant Speaker, to formalize our SOE community service obligation commitments with government and agree on funding sources for these uncommercial but essential services for our people. Number 14, working to develop and adopt appropriate legislative and regulatory arrangements for the respective sectors which we operate in. Number 15, feasibility assessment and construction of over 150 megawatts of sustainable energy generation through mini hydropower stations and commercial solar farms. Number 16, the establishment of a regional aviation training facility for the engineering and pilot skills development, including state-of-the-art aircraft flight simulators and new hangars. Number 17, re-establishment of telecom technical college in Leh as a skills-based training technical college for all state-owned enterprises with an investment of over 100 million kina in partnership with the University of Technology Leh, Telecom, and the Department of National Planning. And 18, and more importantly, Mr. Speaker, for the first time in many, many years, the Marawi government allocating 200 million kina in next year's national budget to help SOE deliver on the programs which I have outlined in this statement. The government recognizes the importance of the SOEs and the role they play in the economic development of our country. And of course, more funding from the SOE, from the government for SOEs this year as well. Mr. Assistant Speaker, to conclude, we have navigated through some of the most demanding economic and social times ever recorded. The fundamentals laid over the past 3 years when this government took office back in 2019 will enable us to capitalize on the bright future we have in front of us. Never have we had so many large-scale projects aimed at improving access to quality health services, education, access to markets, both domestic and international, clean running water, uninterrupted affordable clean energy, and affordable telecommunication services. This is the government we should all be proud of. And finally, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the party I lead, the ministry and my people of Agen, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister, the Honorable James Marabi, this government, and of course, the members of this parliament for your continued service to our SOEs. May God bless the Marawi government. May God bless Papua New Guinea. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.